Nidhi, why don't you tell us about your background, your upbringing, your childhood, and your yesteryears to start with?
Sure. Before I started Karya, I was the Director of Strategy for Honeywell India. I helped them start their space and missiles business in India and helped them take their automation control systems business from B2B to B2B2C. Before which I was a strategy consultant with Bain & Company. I worked with them for 3 years, did a lot of new market entry strategy for B2C, whether it was alcohol, manufacturing, telecom, biomed devices, other stuff. I joined Bain after graduating out of Kellogg in 2008, so I was in Chicago for 2 years. And before that, I was a manager in the new product development team of Bharti Airtel Limited. Back then in 2004, the company was small, opportunities were large, so I actually got the opportunity to craft and release the first ever m-commerce product for India. Before that, in my previous avatar, I was actually a chartered accountant. I'm a CA. I worked with KPMG for about 3 years, did a lot of audits, statutory audits for B2C companies, whether it was Pepsi, Ostrom, Amway, Cargill, so on and so forth. Born and raised in Delhi, BCom honors from Delhi University. We are a family of 4, my dad, my mom, and my brother. So yeah, that's that.
Interestingly, when I was talking to you yesterday, you did happen to mention that you belong to a family of entrepreneurs at heart.
At heart, yes.
Yes. So Nidhi's mom's an entrepreneur, by the way. So why didn't you tell them? Did that inspire you while you were growing up?
So it's very interesting because I think I grew up in a family of both, which represented both ends of the spectrum, right? My dad's a chartered accountant himself. He used to be a corporate person before he gave it all up to start philanthropy. And my mom's an artist, so she still does Tanjore paintings and does a lot of oil and watercolors. And she's dedicated herself from the very beginning to use this for philanthropy herself. So at the end of the day, all things said, one's completely analytical and the other is all colors and all the good-looking stuff. So I think just that concoction of both ends of the spectrum made for very interesting discussions on dining tables, right? Whether it was what's the latest business problem, Dad, or is this a beautiful piece of art or not? So it was very, very interesting and very mixed.
So what about entrepreneurship?
Were
you inclined towards entrepreneurship from the very beginning, or did you want to do it just recently?
So I never grew up thinking I want to be an entrepreneur, right? I grew up thinking I wanted to be part of business because that really made my mind work and genuinely posed a challenge for me. I started to work towards it by acquiring my accounting degree. Then realized that there's just so much that can be done with finance and numbers and the application thereof even in the field of marketing. So at my job at Bharti, I was introduced to marketing analytics, which was this really nice world of numbers and application on consumers and therefore impact on revenue and pretty direct impact on revenue. And then after, of course, I started working with Bain, the entire ability to understand what problem solving can actually do and what focused problem solving can actually do to your business in terms of efficiencies, in terms of hidden opportunities. So these 3 things kind of came together and were applied very well at Honeywell. After I realized I was able to generate business and develop new businesses at Honeywell, I decided to take the jump. But certainly entrepreneurship was not something I was gunning for when I was 16 or 14.
Sure.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that you mentioned that it's important rather to have worked for a couple of companies before you go on doing entrepreneurship. Vis-a-vis, we've had people on the stage talk about entrepreneurship from the angle of, if you just have an idea, just go and do it. So what makes you think differently that one should have experience before going out and heading out? You might want to, you might miss the bus with the idea, right?
Sure. So 2 things, right? One, if you already are certain about what it is that you want to do and you have this idea that is fairly focused and very well defined, then I would certainly not, to your point, take the time to go do a couple of jobs and then come back. You do miss the bus, and genuinely the unmet need is a context of time and the market that you're in, right? So you really don't want to take 4 years off and then come back to this idea, which is probably stale by the end of 4 years. But if you don't know what it is that you want to achieve, what your business idea is, what your focus is, then I think it is equally important to understand what you do not want to do. And the only way you do that is by understanding or gaining experiences that help you understand what it is that you like and do not like, right? So you kind of weed out the stuff you don't like to do and start to veer towards the stuff that you like to do. And you never know when that bright idea kind of hits you, when you're able to validate it. Maybe it's an unmet need in a very large undiscovered area too. But certainly, to what you were saying, I wouldn't recommend having an idea and then kind of waiting it out.
Sure.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So when you talk about entrepreneurship, okay, you've experienced both worlds.
Yes.
You've been
Corporate.
in the corporate world at a good designation, fancy job, fancy title, fancy money, and here you are. For a year you were struggling as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
To get funding. Do you think it's a even balance? I mean, why would you want to leave a cushy job and move into entrepreneurship?
I think I'm hard-coded to be a problem solver.
Okay.
So if I see something that needs to be fixed, I'll just go and fix it, right? That's just me. So if I see something fallen on the ground, if it's a piece of paper and it needs to be put in the litter box, I will go ahead and do it, right? So when I was at Honeywell, this entire thing of not being able to find something as plain, simple, basic as a simple white shirt irked me. And irked me really a lot, right? So I decided, I've said this before, but I decided to do a survey and understood that I wasn't the only one. So clearly my body wasn't a freakish body. And so it had to be met, right? And were there other women who were feeling similarly? And I realized that a whopping 80% of the 200 plus women I electronically surveyed actually agreed with the exact same unmet needs, which were fit, functionality, which basically means you don't just dress to look good, you got to stay comfortable because you're wearing it for more than 8 hours, right? And then just the fact that you don't need to be dull and boring, that you could be fashion forward even when you are not casually dressed. I think these three things kind of led me to take the problem by its horns and kind of figure out a way to solve it. And that's really why I was able to quit Honeywell in 2014 and join this, 2013, 2014 and do this.
Why women? Why not men?
You guys have so many options, it's not even funny.
Really?
Yes.
I think men here.
No, so very interestingly, I mean, if you walked into, a women's store, number one, would you find a women's only store? Question number one. Question number two, would you find a women's brand that will do more than 6, 8, maybe 12 sizes? Question number three, are women only 12 sizes? Are there only 6 sizes? Are sizes only about widths? Are they not about proportions? So these are the questions that kind of come to mind, and therefore the entire focus weird towards women's only, yeah. And we'd rather do one thing and do it right than spread ourselves thin and be schizophrenic as far as the brand is concerned.
So now we'll touch the topic where why most of the people are here. 1 year, 113 investments.
Yeah, my God.
Yeah, tell us about it. And we'd like to know in detail.
Detail?
Yeah.
Okay. So I started my journey exactly on 15th of May 2014. I remember the investor meeting that happened where we decided that yes, now is a good time to kind of seek external investment because we'd started to prove revenues and revenues without much effort. And clearly, if we were to go and grow as a brand, 3 things needed investment. One was working capital, the second was technology, and the third was marketing. Simple marketing, not even brand marketing, right? So just getting your brand language straight, all of that investment needed to happen. We realized that the seed money would last us maybe 3 months, maybe 4 months. And by then, hopefully 6 months tops, we would have secured funding. So we started working on 15th of April 2014. And interestingly, it was on 15th of April 2015 that I signed my term sheet for my pre-series Series A investment. Yes, I pitched to 113 investors. Yes, my pitch started with here we are, we've proven revenue, there's proof of concept, to here we are nearly cash break even, do you want to be part of this journey, right? And somewhere in the background of it, we were obviously completely sweating bullets, where we were like, oh God, why is investment not coming? Is there something we did wrong? Is there something we do not understand? Are there some questions we've left unanswered? So very honestly, just like any typical consultant would, you kind of step back and you say, hey, where is it that these investment conversations are falling through? So the first piece that we heard from the market was, the investor market, was that, everybody's doing this. And so we're like, okay, maybe we should talk about how we're not doing what everybody else is doing. You're competing with Myntra. We're like, no, because we are not a channel and they're a channel. Where they're an aggregator, we're a brand, although Myntra is veering towards that real quick. The third thing we heard was, is this even scalable? You're talking just in time, right? How does this even work? And we're like, hey, people make cars just in time. These are clothes. What are you talking about, right? And if we've grown to service order quantities of 400 plus a day with variations of only up to 5 the next day, then clearly this is scalable and cost effective too, because by the way, we are unit economics positive, right, from the get-go. So when we realized that there was a very large gap between what we were communicating and what was being heard and interpreted, we kind of decided to take our time and choose the investor that would truly understand what it is that we wanted to do, and was aligned truly to the fact that we wanted to be a brand and not just something that was going to drive GMV sales off the boat, right? So we decided to start focusing on cash break even, where we started focusing disproportionately on unit economics. And honestly, around about April, we were in the sort of safe zone where we could have gone a little bit longer, but thankfully things broke, the barrier kind of broke, and we finally got into conversations with our Series A investor, who's pending announcement right now, and Mr. Ratan Tata. So those two things really kind of fell into bag, and I think we just also got very lucky because they understand it the way we mean to have it understood.
So what were there, when you go to an investor, A, what do you have to prepare for? B, what should you be ready to hear?
Oh, let me start with
I've met a couple of investors who were trying to lead, your investment. And now they come back and they tell me, oh, we missed that bus.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I've recently met a couple
You
of
just
them
make me
and
feel
went regret.
Okay.
From them.
Okay.
Saying that, okay, fine, we could not identify what's the potential.
Maybe there was a gap in the way we communicated it, right? And I'll leave it there. So I'll answer the second question first. What is it that you expect to hear? What is it that I have heard? I've heard things like, this is a crappy business idea, it's going nowhere. Okay, great, fine. You can ask them why, and they choose to answer it or not, which is okay. You're a single founder. How does this even work? And then you step back and you say, hey, every company that has been run efficiently is led by one single CEO. So how is this different? Would you rather have 2 captains to the same ship? Are you telling me that I do not have a good A team, which is my second line, and therefore I can take the time off to have this meeting and not ensure dispatches are happening? So there is an organization in place which is process driven and aligned in terms of vision. The next thing you hear is, hey, you're 34 and you're a woman. How is this even going to work? And you stand back and you say, I don't know, you tell me. What is your concern, right? Then you hear things like, this doesn't make sense because you'll be competing with Myntra, and you look at them and you say, well, yes, we will perhaps at one point in time compete with any clothes manufacturer, but today and now the focus is very niche, focus is very focused and very sharp, and what we are offering is genuinely unmet, and what we are offering is genuinely solving a problem, and therefore please look at this data that proves customer stickiness, brand sale through, revenue increments without marketing spend. You hear things like, what are your unit economics? Now there, I stood like a champ and kind of, let it all out. Of course, that's very important. Unit economics are extremely important to the business because you may start to scale, but if you're losing money with every new transaction, then it's really not a good business. Unless you can genuinely put a stake in the ground and say, hey, March, so-and-so, we should be able to hit unit economics because your business model is such. So those are, examples of stuff I've heard. and very honestly answered at all points in time, because the focus was very clear, right? What we wanted to do and wanted to achieve was very clear. Which kind of leads to the answer to the first question, which is what is it that your pitch deck should actually talk about? I think one, it should talk about what it is that you want to do, right? And very clearly so. So you can't say things like, I want to be a marketplace, but I also want to start manufacturing, but by the way, I also own stores which sell raw material. You got to figure out what it is that this particular company will stand for, who will it go after, how will it go after them, why does it make sense? So what is your customer's right to believe, and what is your brand or your company's right to defend, right? So that obviously answers questions on customers, revenue, quality of revenue, channels, growth, adjacencies, all of that. And the second piece really answers current landscape, competitors, who is it in the market, who's likely to be in the market, how will you defend yourself, what is so unique about it. So basically what you do, how you differentiate yourself on the front end as well as the back end. And then of course nobody will want to see a business that does not make money eventually, so you have to prove how you will make money eventually.
So, when we talk about entrepreneurship, there are a lot of highs and lows. And typically when you get rejected by investors, there's a lot of lows.
Oh my God.
How did you manage to pick yourself up, dust yourself again, and go to the next one, and next one, and next one, till the time you got funded?
I think there are two parts to this, right? Number one, your eyes on the ball. So you don't care about the balls you dropped. You want that ball, right? So you kind of go and you keep your eyes focused on the one thing you need to get done, which is, here's my business, it's doing this today, it needs X to do so much later on, and therefore after a year I want to be there. So if you keep your eye on the goal, then there's no way, you lose sight of the scenery. And really honestly, all the rejection is scenery, to the extent that you take input from it and improve your pitch and improve your business model and pivot where it is necessary to obviously genuinely, you treat these as mentorship opportunities where you sit back and you say, hey, what is he saying? What does it mean for my business? Is there genuinely something I'm not looking at that I should be looking at, tweaking, not tweaking currently? And the first part, which is, so one part is a focus bait, you keep your eye on the ball, you don't treat this as anything except feedback, and genuinely, honestly listen to it as feedback and imbibe it, inculcate it. You'd be doing yourself a huge disservice if you ignored everything the investors said, because at the end of the day, they are seasoned business investors and they are looking at it as any investor would, as you should too, because you are the primary investor of this company, right? So in consulting, we use this term where you say you shoot your puppy, right? So if you got to shoot your puppy, you shoot your puppy, right? In so many words, but you will not ever think of doing it yourself. So these investors and these rejections and these feedbacks help you understand and come to that point to make that decision. We were not able to shoot our puppy because every time there was feedback, we either inculcated it and moved our model or moved our, conversation, our communication, or genuinely found a logical answer to it, which was a business savvy answer. But the most important part of this journey of my 365 days was just the support. Support from my seed investors, which was my family fund, support from my family itself, where you come back after a really long day and the investors called you and said, hey, sorry, not going through, and you look at your family and say, this one also said no, and they're like, don't worry, it's okay, one day it'll all come through. So you need those conversations, you need that pillow to put your head on. And then honestly, I think I was also very lucky to have a set of advisors who really held me together and held Karya together, right? Who kind of helped me peel the onion. Am I going all consultant with you right now? I am, yeah. So, help you peel the onion where you say, hey, he said this, what does this really mean? So they keep you thinking, they keep you evolving. And I was very lucky to have a set of advisors from a very large, successful, varied business background. And they helped me stay focused and dust the dust off my back and kind of keep walking. And I will not fail to mention my team. I mean, they continue to come to work every morning, see that we still don't have money, kept believing in the vision, kept believing in what we were trying to achieve, and chugging along like it was their own. So I think pulling together the seed money that you need to provide yourself that runway, pulling together a family who's aligned and completely unconditionally supportive of what it is that you want to do, ensuring that you take feedback, whether it is the investor pitches or the advisors, will go a really long way. and then building together a team which truly believes in you and is there for the honesty you are projecting will go a really long way. I think. Yeah.
So we often hear, like you also mentioned, investors or people anticipating saying women, you're a woman at 34, you're doing a startup, entrepreneurship. It's kind of looked at a very different way in our country. What would your advice be to women entrepreneurs here? Though there's no women and men entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs. Yeah. But what do you want to give them advice and probably help them understand that they could go out there and do something?
I've said this before, so I'll say it again, and I believe in it absolutely unbiasedly, that have no fear. I mean, anything, any bias, any prejudice, any concern can only be removed once your quality of work shines through, once your dedication, your honesty and your results performance shines through. After that, anybody is going to see what you've done, and so all your biases are genuinely a matter of your concern, not anybody else's. And so just chugging along and just doing what you need to do or get done with the quality that you intend to deliver it with is most important. Every fear, every bias, every prejudice can just kind of go away, fade away in the background, doesn't matter.
So while we were having a chat yesterday, I did mention to you that how difficult or easy was it for you to manage the manufacturing process, which is quite a challenge in India. And apparently, Nidhi knows a lot about men because she's grown up.
That just doesn't sound right, my God.
So she solved the problem, and I'd love you to share that with them. Sure. As to because managing manufacture at the end of at the back end is very important. And to do timely delivery, especially in a place like India where there's a lot of labor problems and stuff like that. Yeah.
So we've had our share of labor problems, we will continue to have it, right? I mean, that's the reality of any business that's doing business in India, right? Correct. That's an operational reality, a logistical reality. Anybody faces it. So the two things, right? Number one, you've got to set your expectations right. So you define rules of engagement, you define rules of performance, and you tie payouts, rewards to these key performance indices. So when we were cultivating our vendors, we realized that there were two things that were very critical. One was the turnaround time and the second was quality. We had to define both. What did turnaround time mean? What did quality mean? So you define those parameters, you genuinely train these guys because they are also willing, they're there because they want to start doing business, they want to make a living of them for themselves, and they are entrepreneurs also, so they understand that language. And the second bit is, setting examples. So yes, there was a time that I was hands and feet on the production floor, packing, dispatching because staff was short, Diwali was happening, people took off without intimation. But a job that needs to get done just needs to get done. So even today or tomorrow or day after, whenever, if the factory needs help with folding, packing, bundling, whatever else, I'll be on the floor. So you got to do that to set expectations, to show people that, boss, this really is a lot of, this means something, and so this is not something to be taken lightly. आज ही जाना है, ये कल नहीं जाएगा, and therefore अगर आज जाना है, we do what it takes, even if it means staying up till 4, 5, 6 in the morning, not gone home to sleep, work 36 hours straight, done there, been there, done that, and showed it, and therefore everybody knows that that's the expectation. And even if I said it without doing it, it would have no meaning. So they've seen you, and at a point in time you don't even have to say it because they see you doing it, and then they don't even ask ki meko ghar jana hai 12 baj gaye. They don't do that because they see you doing it, and they just have to stand with you because you're part of a team. So cultivating that sense, cultivating that example is very, very important.
So why don't you share some light behind the idea of Karya and how you brought about a good team in place, kept them motivated, like you mentioned, in times of distress when you're not able to get funding. Right job, and to keep them motivated is kind of a challenge for an entrepreneur, isn't it?
Yes, it totally is, and I think it's a process of evolution. So if you are in a startup that is disruptive, innovative, has not done this before, you will never find ready talent, which is like a pick and drop. You kind of find the qualities that you're looking for in terms of personality, way they think, way they function, their ability to manage, and then you kind of pick that set up and drop them in the deep water. And then much like you, they're swimming too. And it's, like I said, it's a process, so you kind of learn with them, you learn from them, they take some from you, you take some from them. And from that point of view, having a set of folks who will think the way you do in terms of what's most important, right? What are you doing this for, is very, very important. And that can, in my mind, the way we went about doing it was we kept hammering the same message over and over and over and over and over again. There are 4 core values of Karya. We drafted them very early on because that, to my mind, was you can't be compromising those at all. And those 4 core values are what even the tailor understands and will be able to restate. So that is what you really need to do, such that you get people to, do this with you and don't behave like they're doing it for you, right? That's not what a startup team will probably, and I don't know much more than this, but that's not probably what a startup team will want at the beginning phase where times are tough, right?
So how do you stay, probably, how do you compete with your competitors? Because, soon enough there'll be another Karya.
Sure.
Maybe they get a lot of funding, access to a lot of funding, maybe
Sure.
not. So how do you see that as a challenge? Or, from the other point, from the entrepreneur point of view, does it really affect you that, there can be another Karya?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have to be mindful of the landscape you're or your sandbox, right? You have to know where your boundaries are, you have to know what you're good at and what your defense points are, right? So from that point of view, we've gone on disproportionately focused on building new innovations, new way of doing things, new processes, which in themselves are IP sort of, before you kind of go implement them. So whether it's a front end and you talk about the algorithm, or it is a back end when you talk about virtual inventory, just-in-time manufacturing, or whether it is the ability to craft 18 sizes that will fit 85% of the women, or whether it is the ability to add 250 new designs every month, we've hoped to create walls, right? Sure, I mean, I'm sure there'll be people who will figure this out and do it in good time, but at the end of the day, if we are truly creating relationships with our customers, which is what a brand really does, creating affinity and maintaining a relationship, then, we'll continue to work, right? And we'll continue to grow. And honestly, all things said and done, it's a matter of evolution. Again, you'll decide to do some things differently as you gain scale, as you see other people coming in, and so on and so forth.
So coming back to your investment phase, how was it to pitch to Mr. Ratan Tata?
Oh my God.
What was going through? I'm sure you were nervous?
Oh my God, of course I was nervous.
Okay.
You don't get to meet a person like him every day.
Absolutely. So why don't you share that experience? I mean, if you go back remembering that day.
Sure.
What happened, how it happened?
So our meeting was scheduled for an hour. He met us dot on time. It was a very, very calm and very, very conversation-led meeting. He asked the toughest questions possible. It was very clear that he knew what, of course he was very clear about what he needed to understand or ask me or push me on. But it was by far the most smooth and non-disrupted meeting that I've ever had. It was a very, very cool conversation. He asked us, and genuinely, I think he asked what any business person should ask, and asked them very, very humbly, right? I mean, you wouldn't expect that from the Ratan Tata, but he totally is completely grounded, and it went a really long way for us. Yeah.
So, would you like to share what he asked?
The conversation was so long back, but honestly speaking, I think it was just a very, very.
What were those 2 or 3 key points that you think came across from him?
So I can speculate because I can't interpret what was in his mind, but I can speculate, having had that meeting, that he was probably looking for a business which was a good business, for an entrepreneur that was willing to carry it forward and genuinely drive it with passion. And also, looked at somebody who is doing something differently. So it wasn't the same, more of the same, but stuff that was done differently.
So do you think a mentor is important for an entrepreneur?
Oh, by all means. It's like, so when you're an entrepreneur, you're probably acting like the captain of the ship, and just by virtue of that, you don't have peers. So you're literally the apex of that triangle, right? Because you don't have peers, you don't get challenged as strongly as a peer would. One way to do that is, of course, to treat your team like they're your colleagues, which they are. In any startup, hierarchy doesn't make any sense. So they challenge you. And the other bit, which is your advisor mentor base, they do a great job of pulling you up and shaking you up. And I genuinely believe that you have to, one, allow them that space where you say, I'm listening. You can beat me up, it's fine. I will hear you out. I'm here because I believe in you and I trust you to give me the best advice because you have my interest in mind. It's a relationship you share. So you don't go find a mentor. It's a relationship you share with somebody who may be a corporate entrepreneur. They make for great mentors. All of my mentors are corporate entrepreneurs. They've all been part of corporate places where they've started business for corporates. So that's just what helps you connect, and that relationship where you provide them, or the person you look up to and you say, I wish I could do that, right? So yeah.
So
I'd just say stay focused and be fearless. If you genuinely believe in what you're doing, and we're all intelligent people, so if you can genuinely justify what you're doing is the right thing to do, stay focused and be fearless, and there's no other way of doing this.
Great. So I know, I see a lot of faces wanting to ask you questions.
Sure, I'm all ears.
Yeah. Yeah, please.
I'm good, thank you.
Hi, my name is Amit. I'm talking about having a mentor. We all need a mentor.
Amit, can you be a little louder? You can't hear.
Right.
Did you want this? Here you go. I can be louder, it's cool.
Yeah, I was just talking about mentors, and everyone needs a mentor, and it's a privilege. But when you're talking about sharing your dreams, at the end of the day, you are basically giving part of your business to your mentor. How does that work? I mean, how do you feel? Because one stage you've invested into your own vision, you've got your business. Then you share part of that business with an investor. So you're sharing financially, you're sharing your vision. How does that?
This goes a really long way in understanding. So two things to this, right? Number one, you got to figure out what it is that you want to achieve and articulate it clearly so there is clarity, right? So the person who's investing in your dream with you also understands exactly what it is that you're trying to do, and there's no confusion around it. And you both understand that that's the dream today. Of course, as time evolves, as landscapes evolve, your dream will also evolve, right? You can't take a 5-year-old and say at 20 that person will be doing this. It doesn't work like that. And I think everybody is intelligent enough to kind of align with that reality. So clarity on what it is that you want to do, how is it that you're going to achieve it, is very, very important to bring in, or even familiarize a person to that dream. Otherwise, if you say ki, I want to do this rough shape, they are understanding another angle of that rough shape because it is not articulated. But once you, and of course, once they see that dream, whether they align fully to it or not, is genuinely a matter of investor maturity and the investor's understanding of your business plan. I think I got really lucky with both my investors, where they truly understood that we were, one, trying to do a brand, and that this was a vision that Karya had created, and therefore as an investor, they had to understand it, imbibe it, and then promote it, right? And from that point of view, we all have our jobs very clearly defined, and we have our expectations very clearly defined. And at the end of the day, the relationship that you cultivate with them is that of partners, right? You don't treat them like investors. And that, in my mind, goes a really long way in having a very fruitful relationship. So if you can't pick up the phone and talk to them, then there's kuch matlab, this, especially at this stage, you need to develop that relationship.
You mentioned that initially a lot of investors kind of rejected your idea, and then you started finding on the people who will understand what you were trying to do. How do you understand that this particular investor is gonna be in alignment with what I'm thinking?
There is no way of understanding it. You find out, and there's no way of finding it. So I've pitched to angel networks, I've pitched to HNIs, I've pitched to VCs, I've pitched to investment bankers who will enable these interactions. I've pitched to HNIs who are now starting new funds, so on and so forth. So the net cast was really wide, and like I said, with each pitch you kind of evolve because you keep your ears open, right? You got to hear what they are saying. Some bit of it you decide to do now because it is priority and therefore critical to success. But some bit of it you delay, saying this is expensive, can't do now, or I need talent for this, don't have it, so on and so forth. So you prioritize the stuff that is critical to success, and success is defined by the event of funding, really. But all things said and done, I thoroughly, truly learned a lot with every pitch I made. And that was, it went a really long way in articulating what it is that we were trying to do also better. So, somebody would come up and say, hey, what is it that you're doing so differently from anybody else? You stand back and say, I'm not articulating it. That's why, this question kind of came through. So you kind of figure out a way to include that in your pitch. Yeah.
There are many stories which say that when you start a business, when you start with an idea and when you finally launch it, it transforms into something which is totally different, or maybe transforms, takes steps. I've been to a lot of investors. Sometimes I feel that if I have to incorporate their feedback and change my product a little bit, I'm really losing that one focus that I started with. Maybe this thing I wanted, but maybe it may be a reality, or maybe I shouldn't create, it's a creative feedback or it's a not so creative feedback. I feel if you kind of understand what's a creative feedback and whether you should transform your product or not, or whether you should keep it focused or maybe switch it a little bit. In your case, how was the product, the initial idea to the final product? How was the transformation?
So I think two things are important here, right? One is objectivity. So you got to step back and you generally need to clear your love for the business and sort of say, does this even make sense? Is this good business question? And the second bit of it, which was what I was just saying, is prioritization. You decide to do some stuff now. You cannot do some stuff now because it's expensive and you don't have the team or whatever else. But for us, when we started product testing with trunk shows. So we would actually book trunk shows and we would go with our samples to somebody's house, showcase it. They would host people. We would gratify the hostess with something and we would make a sale or not and come back. We realized that the one thing that women really needed was variety. Now that in itself is contradictory to the entire bit of trunk show, right? I mean, I today have a catalog of 1,000 plus SKUs. There's no way I can fit it into one suitcase and go to one person's house and do justice with it. So we had to pivot. We also realized that in the Indian context, trunk shows are fairly new and maybe they'll evolve to a certain state of being later, which is when we'll probably reintroduce them, but we needed to look for a better channel of sales, which is where all the marketplaces kind of came in. And thankfully we caught the wave at the right time because they were also looking to cultivate apparel online back then. So, I hope I'm answering your question here. We pivoted once when we were going from being trunk show only to being trunk show plus marketplace, and then from being just a catalog of 300 SKUs to being 1,000 plus SKU.
And what's your future vision for?
If this has to do justice to my opportunity cost, it has to be one of the largest brands for Western non-casual wear for Indian women, focused on providing the best possible fit with our 18 sizes. Sorry, that gentleman there has been waiting for I don't know how long. Please. Yes, please.
Louder.
How crucial has your diverse professional experience been in shaping your career, both when you were in the corporate?
You want to define what you want to do with a very strong focus, very articulately, sharply. And then of course, because you've been in the business 3, 4, 5 months, you've got some hands-on experience and therefore you try and speculate what it would be. Of course, investors give you feedback, but what you must also get feedback is from industry experts, right? So I genuinely reached out to people in apparel when I was trying to do this and tried to understand what are the various issues that one faces when they're trying to run a B2C brand, right? And from that point of view, you ensure that you incorporate for those, right? Because otherwise it's like going with your eyes blind, making sure that you run into the wall. You got to know where the wall is, what the constraints are, and how you're going to make it happen. So your pitch has to be real. It has to be validated and outside in, not just inside out. So मैंने सोच लिया कि मुझे 100 करोड़ करने हैं, मेरे को कल करने हैं, मगर हो नहीं सकते यार. तो मतलब you got to figure out what it entails. Right? For us, we knew what was missing. and we went about validating it. Right? So we knew that women's western non-casual wear was a very large unmet need. That was very, very evident. We validated it with the survey. Now, very honestly, yes, there are times that we sit, okay, inside of this segment, there are segments. Now, who do we have to communicate? What do we have to appeal to? And so on and so forth. That's where we went ahead and did market research. We went ahead and understood which was that one segment that did not alienate the other 2, 3, 4. Having said that, was a very sharply defined segment anyway, was a growing segment, was willing to spend, was willing to be an active, avid consumer of the category. And we had the right to, so there was a right for this customer to believe in us. And then we had the right to defend it, because if this segment likes variety, if this segment is finicky about fit, then clearly Karya got it, right? So yeah.
You kept it niche at that point of time, and then now like.
I don't like the word niche, I'm sorry. I'd say focused. I'd say focused, right? Niche basically means you alienate everything else. But in our case, just by virtue of being clothes, right? I mean, I appeal as much to a 40-year-old as I do to a 23-year-old, right?
That's the investor given word to us.
Yeah, no,
we
so.
With the word focus, we came out with
Niche, okay, got it. Got it.
That's what happens. They're talking about ideas, they meant the words as well.
Right, right.
Thank you.
No, of course. Product and the innovation around the product is a core competency we of course have and want to improve and cultivate, and so on. The ability to appeal to a certain customer and develop that affinity that we talk about, that is the other piece that we really want to do. So by virtue of that, yes, my focus will be on ensuring that we do what we promised as differentiators and continue to improve on those differentiators. Have I sort of answered your question? Okay, what am I missing? Help me understand so I can answer it.
So I'm trying to understand within the process of manufacturing, what exactly, when the user chooses a cloth online, the thing that generally screws up is the fit or the appearance or the texture which they saw online but didn't deliver, right?
Yeah.
Is there like, and probably these guys are trying to fix it, but they are right now in a very different fight. So like if you had to say by leveraging tech, which is not essentially through code, it can be a process, it can be a manufacturing innovation, it can be anything, right? So what I'm trying to understand, by leveraging tech, what exactly do you plan to solve? Or is it not a tech business? Is it
No, hold back off a little bit. Just the .com bit of it cannot alienate tech and marketing, right? So when I get asked that question of whether I'm a technology company or not, I say of course I'm a technology enabled company. There is no way you can be just in time if you were not technology enabled. However, much like human resource and finance, technology is a support or an application function. I hate the word support. It's an application function, right? So just by virtue of that, technology is integral to my day-to-day functioning. Just the fact that my catalog uploading is done virtually is a technology enabled process, right? Am I technology enabled in the back end as far as being just in time is concerned? It is critical to success over there. Am I technology enabled as far as the front end sizing is concerned? I'd say it is critical to success, which is why I coded my own algorithm, which now sits on Karya.com, which is called What's My Size, where a woman with just 3 inputs is able to get 85% correct size first time. So she doesn't have to try before she buys, she's able to order something based on the output of that algorithm, which is a 3-input algorithm, and that algorithm helps her find her perfect fit 85% of the time. So I'm hoping now that I've kind of, okay, great. Excellent. This was a room of 200 plus people. I finished pitching, we were on a stage, and one person, this gentleman from the back goes, यार कोई इसको बताओ ना यहाँ पर इतने पैसे नहीं मिलते. And then you're like, okay then I'm looking at him and saying, okay, तो कितने पैसे मिलते हैं, right? So you kind of realize that you need to, you got to bring it down a notch from being a very formal, not informal, but a very easy conversation. So this is a matter of conversation, right? So then when you hear things like that, you kind of go back and say, okay, then what do you recommend we talk about? If you have an opinion on it, I'm listening, right? I'm all ears. And when they come back and say things like this business has just started, you look at them and say yes, and then they say Karya.com, what about it? I'm like looking for money there, right? So all of those kind of things are a matter of conversation, and genuinely you have to keep it at that. Otherwise it's it's like one of those ramp walks. You showcase your product and you turn around and you go right back. But who's inside of that person, right? Who's that body? You don't do that till you have a conversation. And I think that's most important as far as convincing. I won't even call it convincing. I'd say just identifying who your investors could be.